My friends, welcome back to another video, and if you are new here, please subscribe my channel and like video. There's a moment every man faces, a moment that cuts deeper than he expected, not because of what she said, but because of what she didn't say. A moment where a woman he cared for suddenly pulls back, acts cold, dismissive, or indifferent, and leaves him questioning everything he thought he understood. When a woman hurts you, it's rarely accidental, and it's rarely obvious. Sometimes she does it to test you. Sometimes she does it to protect herself. Sometimes she does it because she believes you'll tolerate it. But the part men never realize is this. Your response in that moment determines whether she respects you or forgets you. Most men react emotionally. They look for closure. They explain themselves. They ask questions. They try to fix the situation immediately. But here's the truth. The moment she hurts you, she is not watching what you say. She is watching what you become. This is where most men fail the test. Instead of rising, they collapse. Instead of stepping back, they step forward. Instead of confusing her, they reveal themselves completely. And the more you reveal, the more predictable you become. A predictable man is powerless. A predictable man is forgettable. A predictable man is never respected. But a man who stays calm, unreadable, and unreactive when she expects an emotional explosion, that man becomes a psychological puzzle she can't solve. Because women expect emotional reactions. They expect frustration, sadness, anger, questions, explanations, or desperate attempts to fix the situation. What they do not expect is silence. They do not expect composure. They do not expect you to pull back your energy without announcing it. They do not expect you to detach instead of explode. They do not expect you to confuse them gently, quietly, and with absolute control. Confusion is not chaos. Confusion is unpredictability. Confusion is the emotional gap you create when you stop feeding her expectations and start feeding your own strength. When a woman hurts you, she assumes she knows your next move. She assumes she still has emotional leverage. She assumes her behavior will pull you closer, make you chase, or keep you available. But when you respond with silence, discipline, and a shift in your energy, you break the entire pattern she built in her mind. You remove the map she thought she had. You take away the section 1, the power shift. Stop reacting. Start making her doubt emotional script she believed you would follow. And that is where the confusion begins. Suddenly, she's asking herself questions she never expected to ask. Why didn't he react? Did he stop caring? Did I push too far? Is he talking to someone else? Why do I feel uncomfortable now? You flip the emotional polarity instantly. The hunter becomes the hunted. The one who hurt you becomes the one who feels the sting. The woman who created the distance becomes the woman who tries to close it. Because when she hurts you, and you stay calm, mysterious, and controlled, you trigger a psychological shift she cannot ignore. You become the man she cannot read, and the man she cannot read is the man she cannot forget. This video reveals exactly how to do that with precision, with intelligence, and with a level of emotional discipline most men never learn. Before we start, a quick reminder. The real transformation doesn't happen on YouTube. It happens inside the community. If these videos have opened your eyes, what's inside will rebuild your mindset completely. It's not just a course, it's a brotherhood, a private space where men master attraction, emotional control, and the psychology of power. You don't join for a month, you join for life. Every future course, book, and lesson is yours forever. No subscriptions, no limits. Just one decision that changes your direction. If you're serious about growth, discipline, and purpose, click the link below. Join the community. Enroll once, grow forever. Let's dive in. Section 1. The power shift. When you stop reacting and she starts doubting herself. The first and most effective way to confuse a woman after she hurts you is deceptively simple. You do nothing, not emotionally, not verbally, not impulsively. You make no effort to clarify, chase, question, or seek closure. You remain calm, composed, and difficult to read. This sounds easy, but it requires emotional discipline that most men never master. Because when a woman hurts you, whether intentionally or through carelessness, the instinctive male reaction is to respond, to defend, to express pain, to fix what feels broken. But the moment you do that, you give her confirmation that her behavior still controls your emotional center. Women are naturally intuitive. They feel your energy long before they analyze your words. When she hurts you, she subconsciously checks for a reaction, not to destroy you, but to measure her importance and emotional influence. If you respond instantly with frustration, disappointment, or vulnerability, she receives a message she didn't consciously ask for. I still have emotional power over him. This may comfort her, or it may push her even further away. Either way, it does not shift the dynamic in your favor. But when you remain calm, genuinely calm, not acting, everything changes. The emotional script she expected evaporates. The reaction she prepared for never comes. The control she assumed she had slips away silently, and suddenly she becomes the one questioning herself. A woman is confused not by your anger, but by your composure. Anger is predictable. Emotional reactions are predictable. But calm detachment, that is a psychological interruption she is not prepared for. This calmness sends her into internal analysis. She begins questioning what you're thinking, how much you truly care, and whether she misjudged the depth of your feelings. She wonders why you didn't react like other men, why you didn't try to fix things, why you didn't express hurt or disappointment. This lack of reaction forces her to face her own behavior instead of focusing on your response. She starts replaying her actions, trying to understand whether she crossed a line. This self-reflection is where your power grows, because instead of you trying to explain your worth, she begins reassessing it on her own. Your silence creates uncertainty. Uncertainty creates curiosity. Curiosity creates tension. And tension is the birthplace of attraction. Silence is not weakness. Section 2. The silent energy shift. Pull back without a word. Silence is a mirror, one she must look into. A woman who expected you to collapse now finds herself wondering why you're standing taller. A woman who thought she had emotional leverage now questions whether she ever had it at all. A woman who assumed you would chase now feels the weight of your absence, and that weight is what creates confusion, the confusion that pulls her closer. The power shift begins the moment you no longer require a reaction from her to validate yourself. When you're no longer emotionally available to absorb her behavior, she becomes emotionally aware of its impact. Your silence forces her into introspection. And introspection is where her feelings, doubts, regrets, and realizations begin to grow. Your calmness is not the absence of emotion, it is the presence of strength. And strength is the language women understand even when you say nothing at all. Section 2. The silent energy shift. When you pull back without warning and she feels it instantly. One of the most effective ways to confuse a woman who has hurt you is not through confrontation, explanation, or emotional withdrawal expressed in words. It is through something far more subtle and powerful, an invisible shift in your energy. Women are extraordinarily sensitive to energy changes, especially when it comes to men they once felt secure around. They feel it before they understand it, they sense it before they analyze it. And it impacts them far more than anything you could ever say. When your energy shifts, you don't become cold, angry, or distant in a dramatic way. Instead, you simply stop offering the invisible emotional support she had become accustomed to. You stop being overly available. You stop asking how she feels every 2 seconds. You stop giving her reassurance she took for granted. You stop responding instantly. You stop feeding the dynamic that made her feel too confident in her position. You don't punish her. You simply recalibrate. This shift is not about ignoring her. It's about redirecting your energy from her to yourself. And women feel that shift sharply because it disrupts the rhythm they're used to. When a woman knows she hurt you, she expects either an explosion or a plea. But she does not expect a man to simply detach emotionally and move forward without announcing it. This confuses her deeply because it forces her to confront a question she doesn't want to ask. Why isn't he affected like I expected? The silent energy shift communicates three psychological messages simultaneously. First, it signals independence. You are no longer emotionally dependent on her behavior to dictate your state of mind. This immediately increases your value in her eyes because independence is rare and attractive. Second, it signals unpredictability. She doesn't know how to read you anymore. She doesn't know what you're thinking. She doesn't know how much you care. And unpredictability, when paired with masculine composure, pulls her inward. Third, it signals loss. She begins to feel the absence of the emotional version of you she once had access to. This is not the same as ignoring her. It is the sensation of losing something she didn't even know she valued until it was gone. Women are emotional detectives. They notice everything. They notice when your tone becomes lighter instead of heavy. They notice when your presence becomes disciplined instead of eager. They notice when your messages become shorter but not cold. They notice when your attention shifts from chasing them to improving yourself. Suddenly, the energy she used to feel flowing toward her now flows inward into your goals, your life, your routine, your peace. This energy shift makes her uncomfortable in a way she cannot articulate. She begins to mirror your detachment unconsciously, but it doesn't feel empowering to her. It feels destabilizing because, unlike you, she didn't choose the shift. She didn't expect it. She didn't prepare for it, and now she is trying to understand what it means. She starts thinking about the conversations you used to have. She notices the effort you no longer give. She feels the emotional void where your presence once lived. And the more she feels it, the more she begins to wonder whether she miscalculated your strength. This silent shift forces her into a new emotional role. One where she is now the one sensing loss while you stand calmly in your power and confusion grows. Where Section 3, the mirror effect. Stop explaining, let her reflect clarity once lived. Section 3, the mirror effect. When you stop explaining yourself and she starts examining herself, the next level of confusing a woman who hurt you is not through silence alone, but through something far more powerful and rare. You stop explaining yourself. Most men, when they feel pain or confusion, rush to clarify their intentions, defend their actions, or prove their loyalty. They want her to understand their side. They want fairness. They want closure. But the moment you explain yourself to someone who hurt you, you give her the emotional reassurance she didn't earn. A woman cannot feel regret if you keep removing her opportunity to feel it. When you no longer justify your reactions, no longer over-explain your choices, no longer seek validation for your feelings, you create a psychological mirror she cannot avoid. She is forced to look at her own behavior without the comfort of your explanations softening the impact. She must confront the reality of her actions on her own without your emotional guidance telling her how to interpret the situation. This is the mirror effect, and it is one of the most effective ways to awaken her accountability. Instead of you asking, "Why did you do that?" she begins asking herself, "Why did I do that to him?" Instead of you saying, "I didn't deserve that," she begins thinking he didn't deserve that. Instead of you trying to fix what happened, she begins wondering if she broke something more valuable than she realized. And this internal questioning is not gentle. It's intrusive. It lingers in her mind, especially at night. It repeats itself when she sees your name. It echoes when you don't respond the way she expected. Her mind becomes her own teacher, and regret becomes the lesson. Women rarely feel guilty from confrontation, but they often feel guilty from reflection. The moment you stop explaining yourself, her imagination fills in the gaps. And imagination is far more powerful than anything you could ever say. She begins reanalyzing the conversation, the tone you used, the way you looked, the shift in your energy. She wonders whether she misjudged the situation. She wonders whether she pushed too far. She wonders whether the hurt she caused changed something inside you. This is where emotional confusion transforms into emotional consequence. Your silence becomes a symbol of self-respect. Your composure becomes a reminder of your value. Your lack of explanation becomes a boundary she didn't expect. And your distance becomes the emotional evidence that something has shifted, not in anger, but in standards. Women feel the loss of access long before they feel the loss of affection. When she realizes she no longer has the same emotional influence, regret starts to bloom. Not because you punished her, but because your behavior now reflects a man she fears she may be losing. Instead of thinking you're hurt, she starts worrying that you're done. Instead of believing she has time, she starts sensing she doesn't. Instead of assuming you'll come back, she starts wondering if you're already gone. This confusion, this questioning, is what begins to turn her emotional momentum inward. The woman who once hurt you now becomes the woman who quietly fears that she may have damaged something she can't easily repair, and that fear gently and silently becomes the regret that brings her back. Section 4, the clarity reversal. When she starts seeking answers and you become the question. There is a moment in every emotional dynamic where the control shifts, not because someone wins or loses, but because someone stops explaining while the other person starts wondering. That moment is what I call the clarity reversal, and it is one of the most powerful ways to confuse a woman who hurt you. Because nothing destabilizes a woman more than realizing she no longer understands a man she once believed she could predict. When you pull back and stop explaining yourself, something begins to happen inside her. The confidence she had starts to weaken. The assumptions she made start to crumble. The emotional map she used to Section 4, the clarity reversal, she starts seeking answers. Understand you begins to blur. She once believed she knew how you felt, how you reacted, and how much you cared. But now, the silence, the composure, and the shift in your behavior disrupt everything she depended on. Women don't chase men. Women chase clarity. And when she can't read you anymore, clarity becomes her obsession. This is where psychological confusion turns into emotional pursuit. Her mind begins generating scenarios, questions, and assumptions she can't silence. Why didn't he react? Why isn't he explaining anything? Does he even care anymore? Did I push him too far? Is he done with me? Is there someone else? These questions are not random. They are signals that her emotional certainty is collapsing. When a woman hurts you, she expects one of two things: confrontation or pursuit. But when neither happens, when you simply become calm, self-contained, and unavailable for emotional reassurances, she steps into a role she never intended to play. The seeker. This is the moment she begins reaching out more often, not because she wants to reconcile, but because she wants to understand what changed inside you. She might send shorter messages at first, pretending everything is normal. She might ask indirect questions to test your emotions. She might mention something subtle from the past to see if you engage with warmth. She might even create tension, hoping you'll break your composure. But no matter what she does, the common thread remains. She is now trying to understand you. And the man a woman tries to understand is the man she is already emotionally investing in. Again, the clarity reversal is powerful because it flips her emotional strategy. When she hurt you, she assumed she was in control of the dynamic. But your unexpected calmness takes that control away. Her attempts to decode your behavior lead her into deeper emotional territory. The more she tries to understand you, the more she thinks about you. The more she thinks about you, the more she becomes affected by her own behavior. The more she becomes affected, the more confused she becomes about how she feels. Your silence stops being silence. It becomes a signal. It becomes a mystery. It becomes a mirror she cannot stop looking into. And because she cannot predict you anymore, she begins trying to restore the emotional connection. Not because you demanded it, not because you punished her, but because she needs to regain the clarity she lost. Clarity that only you can give, but which you intentionally withhold. This is the point where the dynamic shifts completely. She is no longer focused on what she did. She is focused on what you are doing now. Her emotional attention is now centered on you. Her questions revolve around you. Her confusion is caused by you. And in relationships, the one who becomes the emotional question is the one who holds the emotional power. Section 5. The pride break. When your self-respect forces her to reevaluate everything, the final and most powerful way to confuse a woman who has hurt you is not through punishment, manipulation, or dramatic withdrawal. It is through the one thing she never expects from a man she wounded: unshakable self-respect. When she realizes that your sense of worth is untouched by her actions, that her behavior didn't break you, didn't move you, didn't reduce you, something profound happens inside her. Her pride begins to crack. A woman may not admit it, but she feels safest with a man who values himself. She tests boundaries, sometimes lightly, sometimes sharply, not to destroy the connection, but to understand the strength of the man standing in front of her. When she hurt you on some level, she expected to see weakness, emotional collapse, or insecurity. She expected you to fight for her approval. She expected you to come closer, to plead for understanding, to cling to the connection, even as it's strained. But when you do the opposite, when you hold steady, when your standards become clear without being spoken, when your boundaries become visible without being announced, her entire internal narrative begins to shift. Self-respect confuses her because most men don't have it. Most men fold to avoid conflict. Most men chase to avoid loss. Most men explain to avoid misunderstanding. Section 5. The pride break. Self-respect forces. Her reevaluation. Most men forgive instantly to avoid distance, but you don't. And that difference is what becomes unforgettable. Your refusal to entertain disrespect forces her to confront her own behavior. Instead of you scrambling to fix the situation, she begins wondering whether she crossed a line that changed how you see her. She starts feeling the emotional weight of her actions. She begins questioning whether she misjudged your character. Her pride, which once protected her, now starts working against her because pride cannot survive in the presence of genuine strength. She starts noticing things she ignored before: your emotional discipline, your independence, your silence, your ability to walk away without announcing it. These qualities create a type of pressure she cannot negotiate with. They make her reflect not on who you were, but on who she was in relation to you. Her regret no longer comes from fear of losing you, but from the realization that she failed to handle something valuable with care. This is when she starts returning in small ways: subtle messages, soft tones, gentle invitations. She might reach out with a casual excuse, or she might try to reopen emotional intimacy indirectly. Women rarely say, "I regret hurting you," but their behavior reveals the truth. She becomes softer. She becomes more attentive. She becomes more careful with her words. She becomes more invested in your emotional presence. Her pride is no longer the shield. Her desire for reconnection is this moment, is the emotional tipping point. When your self-respect stays intact, when you refuse to break your frame, when you allow your silence to speak louder than your ego, she no longer sees you as the man she hurt. She sees you as the man she could lose. And that fear, that realization, that emotional shift is what brings her back with sincerity instead of power games. She may not apologize directly, but she will show it in her eyes, in her tone, in the softness of her messages, in the attention she gives you. She will treat you differently because she sees you differently. You transform the narrative without saying a word. The man who maintains his self-respect becomes the man she respects, the man she reconsiders, and the man she chases. Not because he confused her on purpose, but because he showed her a version of masculinity she didn't expect and cannot forget. In the end, everything comes down to one simple truth. A woman doesn't become confused when you raise your voice when you argue or when you try to force clarity. She becomes confused when you detach with dignity, when you respond to her hurt, not with chaos, but with control, not with anger, but with absence, not with desperation, but with self-respect. Because women understand emotional strength more clearly than any words a man could ever speak. When she hurt you, she expected the familiar patterns. She expected reaction. She expected emotion. She expected you to reveal your feelings, expose your intentions, or try to save the connection from falling apart. But what she did not expect was the version of you who rose above it, the man who did not negotiate his worth, the man who did not offer explanations she didn't deserve, the man who did not collapse just because she pushed him emotionally. And that man is unforgettable. Your silence became your boundary. Your composure became your statement. Your distance became your consequence. Your self-respect became your weapon. And these are the tools she cannot argue with because they don't attack her. They confront her behavior without you having to say a single word. They force her to conclusion. Become the unforgettable man. She chases face herself. They make her question her actions, her assumptions, her mistakes. Women feel emotional regret, not when a man demands it, but when a man inspires it through his strength. Most men think power is loud. They think control is visible. They think dominance is expressed in words and actions. But true masculine strength is subtle. It is quiet. It is invisible until needed. It is the ability to walk away without bending, to stay composed while disappointed, and to maintain self-respect even when your emotions are wounded. And this strength does more than confuse a woman. It recalibrates her perception of you. She no longer sees you as the man she hurt, but as the man she underestimated. She no longer sees you as someone emotionally dependent, but emotionally disciplined. She no longer sees you as predictable, but as a mystery she must now figure out again. She no longer sees you as replaceable, but as a rare kind of man she might not encounter twice. When a woman hurts you, you cannot control her actions, but you can control the meaning they have in your life. You can choose silence over reaction, composure over chaos, growth over emotional submission, and when you make that choice, you become the type of man she cannot manipulate, cannot categorize, and cannot forget. Because in the emotional world, the man who confuses her is not the man who plays games. It's the man who refuses to play them. You showed her strength without disrespect, distance without abandonment, boundaries without bitterness, value without pleading, and a man who carries himself this way becomes the one thing every woman respects, fears losing, and silently chases. A man she cannot control because he controls himself. This is the power she wasn't ready for. This is the energy she can't match. This is the version of you she never expected and the version she will remember long after you walk away. Remember, knowledge means nothing without action. If you're ready to rise above emotion and lead with purpose, join the community today at the link below.